Welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Interview Marketing Show. I'm Tom Schwab with Interview Valet, and today we're diving deep into how podcast interview marketing is evolving fast and in real time. From the rise of AI to the shift from SEO to LMO, language machine optimization. The world of digital visibility, it's changing and it's changing fast. And staying ahead of the curve has never been more crucial. Joining me today is a key member of the Interview Valet team, Kristen Nolan. As a senior client account manager, Kristen has her finger on the pulse of what's working and what's next in podcast interview marketing. Together, we'll look back on the trends that shaped 2024, and we'll even make predictions for 2025. If you've wondered how to stay relevant and effective in this rapidly changing digital landscape, this episode is for you. Let's jump in. One of the things I always advise clients is don't make predictions, right? Because by the time it goes out, people are going to look back and say, everybody knew that. Or they're going to say, how did he miss that? So here we are making predictions. We're going to look back on 2024 and ahead to 2025 and what is changing in the world, specifically around podcast interview marketing. We've got Kristen Nolan, one of our senior client account managers here and a trusted source. And Kristen, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here and to chat together.
Yeah. So as we look back on 2024, it went quick, but what were some big thing or one big thing that you saw that changed with podcast interviews this year?
So I think the biggest thing would be AI and the role in the data and podcasting in general, right? I know that you had shared an example where you went into ChatGPT and you were searching for something, and we're sort of used to Google giving us websites and things like that. And so ChatGPT actually gave us podcast interviews and podcasts, in general. And so I felt like that was something that was really really telling of where AI is taking things and the role of podcasting in that.
I agree with you. If I think back, 2020, that was the year of the pandemic. I'll always remember that. And while GPT came out in the end of 2022, I think it was 2024 that it had the big impact, right? And what you were referring to there just happened a couple of weeks ago. So here we are. It was probably right around Thanksgiving time of 2024, and put somebody's name into ChatGPT. And I did it by accident, right? We all have GPT open. It's funny. We call it Chad here. I had Chad open and I thought I was putting a client's name in another field. And I had the window for ChatGPT open, put it in, hit return. And it gave me this full summary with a picture of him. And at the bottom, it said sources. I had never seen that before. And I clicked on the sources, and it was amazing because down the right-hand column, all that it was his LinkedIn profile, his website, his book, and then all of the podcast interviews that he'd been on. That was probably 2/3 of the content. And I could see what they were pulling out of there came from the podcast interviews. And I think that is just amazing that they're now showing us where they're getting their data to.
Yeah, I think that's so important to show the source. And I also think that, the emphasis on LMO, right? We've all, I've had a couple of clients and they're, they've talked about how SEO is moving in a different direction, right? We're really focused on LMO. And so I think that this just further proves the importance of, being out there on more than just a website, right? You want to get your name out there and you want to get your visibility out there on multiple platforms to have the most impact.
Yeah. And I know what LMO is now, but the first time somebody told me, and this had to be, probably I was Sam Malakarjanan from HubSpot. He mentioned it back in probably midsummer when we were started to get referrals from ChatGPT. And he's like, oh, that's from LMO. And I'm like, what's LMO? Right. I know what SEO is, search engine optimization, but he's like, LMO is language machine optimization. Some people are calling it AIO. It's basically, how do you get found by these large language models. And it was weird, over the summer, we always ask people that come to us, well, how'd you find out about us? And they'd be like, oh, ChatGPT told you about us. And I'm like, really? And it continued. We heard it from clients. We also, we've heard it more frequently now. And in talking with the people from HubSpot and Agent AI there, they believe it's driven by two things, right? Share of voice. How much are people talking about you as opposed to other people? And then sentiment, right? Are they talking positively, neutrally, or negatively? And you think about it, a podcast interview is that collaborative content. So there's the authority there. And it's, 30, 45 minutes of seeded content for the search engines to learn from. And it's all positive. So it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that is so great about podcasts is really you get a feel for someone, right? Like you get to understand their personality, what their thoughts are. And so it's really just kind of a window into, kind of trying before you buy or work together, right? Or partner together. And so I love that.
And that's something that we're doing proactively here for a couple of reasons, right? As people may notice that I'm not the only voice out there for Interview Valet. This summer, when we found out that it's share of voice, it's like, well, we need more than just one person. So we've got now 4 other, we call them talents. So there's a total of 5 talents that Interview Valet has speaking on podcasts. And I think that's important because while I may say something a certain way, you say it a different way. Liz talks about it from a PR background. I was listening to Chloe the other day on a podcast on health and wellness. And what she was sharing there, it's like, yeah, it all made sense, but it's not things that I normally would share. So I think having different voices for our clients to hear, but also for the AI to hear is so important.
Yeah, we all kind of have different perspectives. And so I think it's really valuable, right? Like we all have our different interests and backgrounds. So being able to share that, I think, is really powerful because then we can, find people that our message resonates with and we, can further that.
Yeah. Do you see any negative aspects of AI, right? It's always a tool, right? So tools are double-edged, right? They can amplify our brilliance or amplify our ignorance.
Yeah. So I know that there are like some AI podcasts, right? So I think we've talked about it briefly as a team. And I found that to be really interesting because one of the things that I love about listening to a podcast is it feels like you're eavesdropping on 2 people having a conversation. Whereas when, it's AI, it may not have that same connection or that same feeling because it's not, 2 real people necessarily talking.
Yeah, it's Notebook LM, I think is what you're talking about there. And it's interesting. We played around with that. And for Audible learners, it's great, right? Drop a book or a paper or whatever it is, and then say, give me a 5-minute podcast between 2 people talking about this. And the one that I sent out to the team is I took my book, right? Podcast Guest Profits, and said, do a 30-minute podcast interview out of this. And it was 2 AI voices. And one sounded like she was Generation X or Z, right? With the tone and everything. And they were talking about the book. And while it was interesting, right? And if I was studying right now in college, that's how I would do it. But it was obvious that there was something off, that it wasn't human.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things that is so important is that connection and that, I take that into consideration when looking at shows for my clients, right? Like I want to see is the host going to be a good fit for my client just as much as is my client going to be a good fit for, the podcast and the target audience. So I think that, when you think about that, and I've had many clients come back and say, hey, like, we recorded a podcast and we had a great conversation. We're going to continue to partner together. And I'm like, that's incredible. So I sometimes feel like a matchmaker. And that's one of the things that I love about it. And I think that is definitely a challenge when we look into like the AI side of podcasting, where it isn't real people.
Maybe someday it'll get to that, but it's not there now, right? There's that human connection. I even think of, the guy that started, I think it was Salesforce or LinkedIn, had his AI, and he did a podcast interview with himself. And it was just a little bit weird, right? That was one. The other thing too is that that I've seen from AI is there's some tools out there that let you to do bad at scale, right? There's one out there that purports now you can pitch 1,000 podcasts in the time that it used to take you to pitch one. And it's just like, oh man, that's what the world needs, is more spam.
It's those cold LinkedIn messages you get, right? Or the emails. Like, I can't tell you how many emails we get from people. Most of the time they're my spam folder, but occasionally they'll peek through. And it's so not personalized, and it's just very cold. And I want to just respond and be like, how many people have you closed doing this? Because it's not efficient. Like, right. Like you have no connection. And so that really, people do business with people they like. They don't do business with robots that send cold emails.
Yeah. It's, this is the second point I wanted to say for 2024. And I heard a client, I learned so much from our clients. He nailed it when he said, we have moved from a world of abundance to a world of efficiency. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, 4 years ago, right? A few years ago, money used to be abundant, right? You could get it, interest rates were pretty much zero. Labor was abundant, right? There was lots of people out there. And all of a sudden things have changed where money's not free, and it's not going to be in the near future, right? Probably the long-term future. Labor, right? The labor market is tight. You can't find people. You can't find good people. And now we've gone from this time of just send more to like, no, we need to get more out of everyone. And it was an interesting take on his part. And I think it's something that we're seeing also, right? When our clients come to us, they don't want to do more interviews. They value their time. They want to get more out of every interview. And this idea of just do more, it seems like it's almost like a Y2K thing. Now people are like, how can we get better out of this?
Yeah, it's like that, like you throw spaghetti at a wall and hope that something sticks, right? So, I think it's important to, really, really maximize your time and maximize your efforts, right? If you're out there and you're making 1,000 pitches to someone, that's not the best use of your time, because you could have taken that time to do one quality, and have one quality conversation, that you really are maximizing, your time and effort.
Yeah. One of our past clients, Gail Moody Bird, she's now the chief marketing officer for LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And I love how she said, we're getting more efficient at things that are less effective. And I think the world is seeing this. So looking back at 2024, right? I've been harping, we're one conversation away, not one funnel away, right? And it was funny, Russell Brunson, right? The father of ClickFunnels came out this year and he said, this is the last ClickFunnels live because funnels aren't working anymore. Now he's got something new that he's teasing, but it's like, yeah, people realizing they don't want to be in a funnel, right? There was years ago that author Bill Troy wrote that book, Clicksand, How Digital Marketing is Ruining Your Business. And I loved at that point, he was the canary in the coal mine that said, what works for these little transactions does not work for B2B sales, right? He said it so clearly, whales don't click and big fish don't swim through funnels. And I think people are starting to see this now in 2024, and they're changing their marketing because of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there is a huge shift within the marketing industry where people are definitely focused on, maximizing their time and effort, right? We want to make sure that we're doing the right things the right way versus doing a lot of things the wrong way.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting because people want data, right? But I think also the more data we get, sometimes they're questioning the data, right? They get the data and then they don't believe it.
Yep, absolutely. I think sometimes you can be so into the data that like it kind of takes over things. And it causes, I think, a lot of like overthinking, right? And I'll tell you, I sometimes like at my first, interview, I went in and you overthink it, and then you get in the seat and you're having the conversation. You're like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was, right? And so sometimes it's just getting into it and then, starting it, ripping the Band-Aid off, and then it gets easier.
It's like, well, first of all, this year in 2024, there was some whistleblowers that said, no, what Google said publicly and in front of Congress isn't true, right? There was data that came out to say, no, this is not how the search engines are working, right? So it's like, oh, so the data isn't true. Or even if the data is true, is it meaningful, right? Is that what we're going for? It's like the old days of people were optimizing for Facebook likes. And, in 2024, I get so many blind pitches to be on our podcast, but I also get these blind pitches from LinkedIn, from email of, do you want more leads? And people are realizing that nobody wants more leads, right? The person with the most leads doesn't win. It's the person with the most profits. And how do you get profits from happy customers that stay with you, that value what you do? And all of a sudden it's like, as we start to talk with clients, it's like, well, what are you optimizing for? Right? Because if all you want is leads, get on a podcast and say, you're giving away a Tesla, right? Everybody will opt in. Well, probably, right? And so you'll get lots of leads, but not lots of customers. And more I hear clients say, I like podcast interviews because the leads self-select, right? They're either turning you up or turning you off. They come pre-selected, pre-vetted. And so it just makes the close rate so much easier and so much more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, as I mentioned previously, people get to sort of try before they buy or try before they partner with you. They get a sense of who you are, what's important to you, what value you bring to them. And so I think that's so critical because you're not, it's not a cold LinkedIn message. It's someone that feels like they have a connection with you and says, I like Tom, I want to work together with him, or I like, whoever. So I think it's really important that we have the ability to showcase that, right? Like, what are you, and I advise my clients on this all the time. What makes you different, right? I have quite a few executive coaches. What is it about you that makes you different from all the others out there? And let's shine a light on that. Let's highlight that, because that's what's going to be the factor of why someone picks you over someone else.
And always be talking about new things, right? Right. As you learn, share that with the community. And we're always, we've got clients that update their campaign, once a month or once a quarter into something that we're really focusing on doing, right? Every quarter, have a different focus on that. Because if you're talking about the same thing that you were a year ago, chances are your competitors are too, right? And to me, there's nothing more reassuring is to see your competitor talking about something that you talked about a year ago, right? A year ago, we were talking about, it's not about podcast guesting, right? It's about controlling the crowd you talk to, about controlling the conversions, right? Taking them from a passive listener to an active visitor to an engaged lead, and then even repurposing on controlling the conversations. And I was struck this summer when I saw another person in the industry, right? And they had a webinar on this. And I'm like, excellent, right? And people are like, Well, aren't you mad they stole your stuff? No, I'm glad because we're leading the industry and it's getting better, right? People aren't just saying more, more, more. And so it's one of these things where you want to be talking about the newest things that you're doing, right? And we openly do this. We always show behind the curtain first with our clients, but I also talk about it on this show too.
Yeah, I think it's important to, take a look at all of the things that we're doing, and how do we bring that to the industry and make it better, right? I have clients and they'll say, I don't want to be on shows with potential competitors. And I'll say, well, why? There's room at the table for everyone, right? If they have, 2,500 listeners, all 2,500 of those listeners aren't their clients. And so your message and your personality may resonate more with them. And so go and have the conversation. I would love to have conversations with my, with my peers, and I would love to learn and grow from them. So I think there's just so many benefits to having those conversations and to being a part of something that, genuinely brings some additional value and collaboration within the industry.
It's the idea of a scarcity mentality where, I don't want to share, or an abundance mentality. And, the thing is we got so many potential clients out there. You couldn't serve the entire market. And, as the Christopher Lockhead and the people from Category Design say, you just want to be the category king, right? Or queen, because that gets you 78% of the potential, or of the revenue. And then everybody else copies that. So if you don't have competitors, if you don't have people copying you, you probably don't have a category.
Yep. 100%. I think, really setting yourself above, and then also being someone that's collaborative with others. I think it brings so much value, versus that mentality of like, me, I need to take everything. It's all mine. People don't want to work with people like that anyway.
Well, I got one prediction for 2025, and I think that by the summer of 2025, people are going to say, oh yeah, he was right. He just got the date wrong on it. I believe that in 2026, that ChatGPT and the other engines will be our best referral source. It's scary because, so many people's businesses are built on SEO or pay-per-click, right? And, we do some pay-per-click just more or less to bid up our own name because we know other people are bidding on it. But it's interesting, Kristen, and this has happened so quickly, right? Over the last probably 6 weeks. When you go to Google now, the first thing you see is AI, then the paid ads, and then SEO is at the bottom. So even if you're number one in SEO, congratulations, you just won the bottom of the page. And David Bonney, a great friend of the company and a great sales coach, he was the one that pointed out to me that there's an extension now for Google. It's hard to find in the Google App Store because they don't want you using it. But when you go and search, it just pulls up AI. So it's like, I don't care how much you spend on paid ads, you don't get seen. I don't care how many keywords and how good your SEO is, you're not even seen there. And so that is a scary place for people. If your business is built on SEO or pay-per-click, that could be going away quicker than you thought.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, as we sort of look back, right, like we think of like early adopters. And I think the people that are most successful are the people that embrace the change. They adopt new technology and things, quicker than others. And those are the people that I think really elevate themselves above others, because it's the worst thing possible to have an idea or, a great product or service and be the last one to find out about it. Right. Like, and so I think really leaning into, that early adoption, and, if you're not using ChatGPT, I definitely recommend getting on it. But, in addition, I think really just, looking into LMO and how it can work for you, to promote your business.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because with SEO, there was always hacks, right? And, this would be the hack, right? And every time someone would find they call it black hat, right? A way to game the system, then Google would come back and they'd punish it, but you could find the next way, right? And there was always sort of a way to cheat the system. Talking with Sam Malakarjanan from Agent AI, and he's like, we can't cheat the system with AI. Well, first of all, we don't know how it was built, because SEO, there was always somebody on the inside that would sort of leak something. Nothing's getting leaked. And it's too smart to be manipulated, right? If I say the word podcast interview marketing 100 times, it's not a keyword that AI is going to go, oh, okay. No, they're going to just say that sounds stupid. So you can't cheat it. And it's great because the people that are winning are the people that are doing it right. They're getting rewarded for it. They're putting out that content. They're sharing their ideas, right? ChatGPT, all of them, they want the new ideas. So if you're just sharing stuff that, is they already knows, it's not going to put you out there. But if you're out there with cutting edge ideas, sharing it on podcasts, on podcast interviews, places where people can repurpose it into social media, you're going to be rewarded for that.
Absolutely. I think that's such a value to doing it, like really, really seeing the results and the fruits of your labor. Because I think sometimes, as you mentioned, like, pay per click, do you see the results in the same way that you see the results when someone gets to know you or gets to hear you on a podcast? I think it's two very different things.
Yeah. And that's why we're trying to do multiple speakers, right? So that we've got different voices that our clients are hearing, but also that AI is hearing, talking about different topics, right? So that when somebody searches for health and wellness and how to be a podcast guest, they're finding stuff. Now, it might be Chloe's stuff and not mine, but that's okay as long as it's with Interview Valet, and trying to get that data out there. One of the things that I'm concerned about is when I found out that that ChatGPT was showing the sources, I shared it with a bunch of friends, and one of them, great guy, but he's been on a sabbatical this last year, and he came back and he's like, it's not showing on mine. So I think there's a recency basis too, right? And that concerns me. It's like, okay, I've done almost 1,000 podcast interviews over the last decade. Well, it's sort of like, that's okay. All right. But ChatGPT is always looking and saying, what have you done lately? What's cutting edge, right? I've already got the old stuff. What am I learning new? So I think there's a need to get out there continually.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think consistency is key. I always tell my clients, right? We want to be consistent in our efforts, and really, really being consistent, I think can drive results.
It'll be interesting if that's the prediction for 2025 is easy, right? I don't know. What's the prediction for 2030, that the word Google as a verb, maybe will go away.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself personally, whether it's personally or professionally, I go to ChatGPT for just about everything. I mean, my mom had asked me for something and I sent it over to her and she was like, how did you do this in 5 minutes? I mean, it's again, back to the efficiency, but I also think there is value in, I'll draft emails, right? And, I'll take what ChatGPT gives me and I'll go in and I'll adjust it and give it that personal touch. Right. And I think that's important to kind of balance, what ChatGPT gives you and then adding sort of the Kristen touch, as I call it.
Yes. It's a tool. It's a tool that we use to empower us, not replace us.
Yes. 100%.
Kristen, it'll be interesting here to see how 2025 plays out. I think podcast interview marketing is more powerful today than it ever has been, right? We're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. And that first probably 3 years, people would say, what's a podcast, right? And now people know what a podcast is. They're listening to it. Our customers are listening to it. Our clients are listening to it. And even the AI search engines are listening to it.
Yeah, it's definitely like a cool time to learn new things and, really, really have something like a resource just continue to grow and learn from.
Well, and we'll continue to share what we learn here. That's the whole idea behind the podcast interview marketing show. We wanted to share what we're learning when we learn it, and really help the entire industry, because it's not just about another podcast interview. It's not just about, getting another appearance. It's making the most of every appearance. And one of the things that I sign my emails with and tell people a lot is stay strong, because the world needs to hear you now more than ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to all the great things in 2025 and beyond.
Well, time will tell if we were correct on our predictions, but you can be sure this was an insightful conversation with Kristen Nolan. From AI-driven search strategy to the importance of consistency in podcast appearances. Today's discussion was packed with actionable ideas to help you navigate the shifting digital landscape. So here's your next step. Think about how you can align your podcast appearances with what Kristen called language machine optimization. Update your messaging, showcase your authority, and most importantly, keep creating fresh, relevant content that stands out both to your audience and to AI. If today's episode sparked some ideas for you, don't keep them to yourself. Share this episode with a friend or a colleague. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show so you don't miss out on any future insights like these. Leave us a review. Hey, it helps us reach even more business leaders like you. And remember, stay strong. The world needs to hear your voice now more than ever. Thank you for listening, and here's to making 2025 the best year ever.